is we're going to be doing a session now on knife safety and tool safety for the backwoods within scouting. I myself have been a scout leader now for 33 years, and I've been over 46 years involved in scouting, and it's been sort of my life all along. So as part of a series of videos, we're going to do, the first part of it is going to be on tool safety. So as I said, we're going to cover tool safety, and one of the most important tools in the scouting backwoods is that of your backwoods or your bushcraft knife. So what do we look for, or what's the most important thing when you look for a bushcraft knife? And that is, of course, is how we're going to use it when we're working with young people, especially scouts. So a couple of things that we look for. I have a range of knives here, and with the knives it all depends on how much we have to spend, and it's really, really important that with scouts we need to get the best value for money. So I have a range of knives, as I said, and these are really simple knives. These knives are produced by a company called Mora Knife. What you'll find about them is they're very sharp, they're very well made, and one thing about them is that they're very cheap. So for instance, this knife is known as the Basic 511. It's an ideal first timer's knife for young people within scouting. So if I just do the unclip, and this is the knife, right? So as I said, this is the Basic 511. The cost of this knife is about £6, you know. So when we're out in the woods and you were to drop the knife or you were to lose a knife, you know, it's not an awful lot of money to lose. So it's a great beginner's knife. So what's the features of the knife? Well, first of all, with this small Mora knife is you have a 3.5-inch blade. It's made with carbon steel, which means it's very easy to sharpen. It holds an edge very good, but then the disadvantage of it is, because it's carbon steel, is that it needs to make sure that it's always dry before you put it away, because it rusts quite easy. One of the other good features of this knife is its moulded plastic handle, and it also has a very large finger guard, which means it's safe for the kids to hold and grip without their hands sliding forward. So that's your Basic 511 Mora knife. And as I said, £6 on a lot of the sites, so very well worth the money. The next knife I have, which is really, really ideal for scouts, especially the younger ages, beavers and cubs. And people often say to me, why would you let beavers hold a knife? Well, do you know what? A knife in a trained pair of hands is as safe as anything, you know. So it's all about how we teach the kids to make sure that they use the knife properly and they keep themselves safe. So what's the advantage of this knife above the 511? Well, this is called your Pro Safe knife. And the difference with this one is the point's gone. So as a stabbing knife, it really can't do much damage. It still has a sharp blade on it, which is carbon steel, very easy to sharp. It also has then the large finger grip, only this time it has a rubberized handle, which makes it much more easier to grip compared to that of the plastic moulded. So as I said, it's a rubberized and it's easier on the hand. So the Pro Safety has the tip of it's gone, which leaves it much safer for the kids to use. But again, this is your Pro Safety knife, again by Mora. Cost of this knife is £8, so it's still well within the price range of a lot of scout groups. It's Pro Safety. And the last knife that we have here then, which is then more or less for the scout age group, ventures and leaders, is your Mora companion knife. Slightly larger knife. This now has a 4-inch blade. Again, carbon steel with a Scandi grind, very easy to sharpen. But what you'll notice about this knife is the large finger guard is now gone. So ideally suited for that of the older Scout Group range. Very comfortable to hold, but again, price-wise, the Mora knife in your companion works out about £12. So again, it'll not break your balance. So that's your companion. So 3 good knives that we can use for starters when we're starting our backwards journey within scouting. Now, as I said, when you're looking for a good backwards stroke bushcraft knife, is for safety reasons, we always look for that fixed blade knife, just like the knives that I have shown you. Now, there is a place for your small foldable knife, like your Open L. But what we find within the backwards and bushcraft is these can be slightly dangerous in a way that when you're working with them, they sometimes have a tendency to close, which makes them a lot more dangerous. Now, it still has your 3.5 inch, 2.5 inch blade, 3-inch blade probably. So it still has the working blade of a fixed knife. So it's still just as some people would say, just as dangerous. But with this, it can fold on you and give you a nasty cut, which I've seen many places. But as I've said, it has its job to do within scouting. So I just keep one in my pocket. So with the fixed blade knife, what do we look for when we have that wee bit of more money that we can spend and you're really getting into your backwards and your bushcraft, is you can buy a much more expensive knife. And a couple of the features which are very similar to that of those knives is we have what's known as a PKS, which is my own personal bushcraft knife. What we look for in a bushcraft knife basically is a number of things. We look to make sure that it's full tang. And what I mean by full tang is that the blade runs from the point right down to the bottom of the handle. So it's one piece of metal the whole way down. This is where the expense comes in. The likes of the Mora knives, them knives would maybe only go halfway to 3/4 of way down. Whereas when you buy a much more expensive knife, you can go for the full tang. Also, you'll find is the handles or the scales, which this is known as, is in a much more expensive knife is either wood, micarta, or a really fancy plastic, and it's normally held on with 2 or 3 pins. The other feature of a bushcraft knife, a heavy duty bushcraft knife, is the thickness of the blade itself. And what you have here is you have a 3mm to 3.5mm thickness of knife. Also, you'll notice that the spine of the knife, which is this part, is very sharp at a 90-degree angle. And that leaves it able so that we're able to strike our ferro rod with it, which is really, really important in bushcraft and backwards. And that is, of course, your PKS bushcraft knife. Now, what's the safety features we talk about when we're using any of the knives? Well, there's a couple of things that we have to be really aware of. And that is, when we're using with knives of any type in the outdoors, when they're not in use, the first thing you must do is always put it away, back into its sheath. You don't leave it laying on the table out of its sheath. You don't stick it into a log. You just don't leave it. You don't see it stuck into the ground. You put it back into the sheath to make sure that it's away safe, right? Very important. When you go to hand over a knife, as I'll do here, is if I can call Stevie maybe to take over the knife. If I'm handing over a knife, I would hand my knife over in the sheath, just like this.
Thank you.
What you've heard is Stevie has replied by saying thank you, so I know he has a knife. So when he hands it back to me, thank you. Now, if the knife is connected in your sheath and you have to hand the knife over without the sheath, it's slightly different. So with this knife, I'm going to hand over to Stevie now. It's slightly different. And again, this is a very important safety technique that we use within scouting. So to hand over the knife is I'll call Stevie forward and I'll hand. So what I do is I swing the knife round into my hand
thank you.
I wait till Stevie says thank you, and I release the knife. And what that does is that's make sure that I know that he, by saying thank you, that he's received the knife and that he has it in control, and I can let go. Because there's nothing worse than me losing concentration, handing over the knife, thinking that he has got it when he hasn't, and all of a sudden I let go and the knife ends up in his foot. So really, really important feature that we do within scouting. Thank you. And just like that. So one of our features, working area. Working area is really important as well. So a good way of working is, a technique that I use is your arm's length plus your tool length. So there's my arm's length plus the tool. There's my arm's length plus the tool. I really don't want anybody within that area. Really important to look at that feature. Within scouting and the younger age group, we try to make it slightly longer, and we would have it 2 arms length plus a tool length. But when we're working with the older section, scouts and adults, it's an arm's length plus the tool length. Understand? Right. Safety. Also, when we're working within using knives and any of the tools, it's always about your peripheral vision. Making sure that when you're working, that your eyes are still scanning while you're concentrating on the work that you're doing, but you're still looking around, making sure that nobody's going to be walking into your danger zone, because that is your danger zone, remember. And if you accidentally drop the knife or lose the knife or flick the knife, it could go into somebody. So remember, peripheral vision, really important. Another way that we can use our knife as well is when we want to split timber. And remember, I spoke about the advantage of having a full tang knife, from the tip to the handle, all one piece of metal. And that comes into its own whenever you're going to use it to split timber. So what we'll do is we'll place a small bit of timber on your chopping block. We'll use another piece of timber as a baton. And what we'll do is we'll just put the knife on top. All of a sudden, we split it in half. So a knife can be used like a mini axe as well. Really simple, on top, baton it down, and for splitting your timber down. And that's called batoning. So now we have Adam has joined me. Adam's also a scout within 14th Fermanagh, and is also a member of the club we have here, Oakwood Bushcraft. So he's going to give me a wee hand now in about using the saws and the importance and the safe way of using the saw. So in Scouts we have 2 types of saw we use. We have the bow saw, which this is a Fiskars one, and again it's got a very simple blade guard that clips on and off. So that's the bow saw. Adam also has what's known as a folding saw. Now, remember when we talked about the knives, you have a fixed blade and you have a folding knife. Now, with saws, it's different, because this now is safer and it's a folding saw, because these have a locking system. So what you'll notice is, with this Laplander, so it comes out and it locks in place. And you must depress the button to fold it again. So this is what's known as a Laplander folding saw. Different types of models, different makes of them as well, but they all do the same job. And what we do is we find this to be a very, very good one for working with the kids. It holds a great edge in the teeth, and it works on the pull cut. So Adam's gonna hold this for me to put a bit of weight on it. Now, normally if we were sawing, what you'll find is a lot of kids put their hand and they start sawing. But what tends to happen, most of the worst cuts that I've seen in the outdoors have been a saw jumping. And what tends to happen is, as you're pushing and pulling, sometimes the blade jumps and gets you there, right? So how do we stop that or mitigate that? And we do that by using a technique of an overhand, it's called. So depending on where we want to cut, we place our hand on the other edge, and what we'll do now is we cut like this, and we slowly cut away. Adam's putting pressure on it, I'm putting pressure on my side, and it comes off as simple as that. Now, the rationale behind that is, if Adam holds that again for me, is that now if it bounces, it can't go nowhere. It can't catch me. So that's the reason being. You can do the same technique using the bow saw. So if he's holding it there, with this, you put your hand through the blade of the bow saw, and we can slowly cut. Again, hands well protected, can't bounce, and that's it. So putting your hand through. So two important ways of either using the bow saw or using the Laplander. And that is the simple idea of using the saw safety. And I remember, just use your peripheral vision. But again, for holding small twigs, it's good to have somebody to give you a hand to hold it. Now I'm sitting down, we're going to do a little project, really for practicing your knife skills. But when you're sitting down, it becomes a little bit more dangerous when you're doing knife work, right? Because basically what we have now is this area here is called the death triangle. And people wonder, like, Tony, why do they call it a death triangle? Because basically running up the inside of your legs here is your femoral artery. Now, if you nick this and you start bleeding, it's from a very good source. You'll be dead within 3 minutes unless you can get the bleeding stopped. So it's really, really important about when you're sitting down is about where you have your hands and where you use your hands when you're holding the knife. So when I'm working on a sitting position, one thing is important is that I'm not working in this position because of how you can cut yourself, right? The position that you work in is behind your knees. You have two hollows. You put your elbows on your knees, and that means I can work in that position. Another safe position I can work in is also up high, but I'm going to show you the holes and the grips of when we're working with the knives in that position. Happy? So I'll explain to what we're going to do. So as I said, we're going to practice by making a tri-stick, and what we do by making a tri-stick is different types of cuts and notches that are all used within bushcraft. And what this does is it helps you get control of the knife and how to use the knife safely. And that's important, is that word, how to use the knife safely. So we're going to do a rounded top. We're going to do a pot hanging notch, and we'll also do what's known as a parrot beak notch. And again, all different uses, and also a point, right? So here we go. So first of all, we're going to do a point. So holding our knife. So the first grip we're going to do is what's known as your fist grip or your foregrip. And so the back of your knife goes into the way of your hand and you grip it like so. That's your foregrip, right? Or fist grip. What we do with that now is we can hold our elbows on our knees, hold the knife up, and all we do now is, what we're going to do is we're going to pull the timber away. So as you see, it's not the knife moving, it's the timber. So adjust, pulling the timber away bit by bit, slowly working my way around until I get a point. Nice point. That's called your fist grip or foregrip. And also another grip to take large pieces off is what's known as your chicken dance grip or your chest lever grip. So what we do with that is we turn the knife round now. Remember, the spine of the knife went into the way of the hand. Now what it is it's the handle of the knife goes in. So it's now that the knife blade, if I'm looking at the knife blade, it's looking straight at me. With this grip now is, it goes up, the base, the butt of the knife goes into my chest handle, or the butt of the knife goes into the centre of my chest. And what we do now is we're going to use our back muscles for this cut. So basically what we're doing is I'm using the back muscles to slice away at the edge. So here we go. And as you can see, I'm taking big massive shards of it by just pulling back and forth. The advantage of this cut is it's great for younger people because the knife isn't bouncing about all over the show. And you can just see how easy it is to put a good edge and the knife stays still. So, chest lever grip or your chicken dancing grip. So, what's this useful for? Well, if you're making a stake to kill vampires or you're making a tent peg, so all those are great for pointing. So remember, you can do your forehand grip or fist grip on your knees, pulling, or your chest lever grip for pointing it. The next grip we're going to use now is a simple grip that we do for rounding off the tip. So what you'll see is this is a broken bit of hazel. So if we were going to make this into a tent peg, we're going to round off the tip of this. So for this hold, it's very similar to your forearm grip, only this time what we're going to do is we're going to place our thumb on the back of the spine of the knife. We then bring it down, and using her thumb from our other hand, we can slowly take off the edges, and we can round it all off now. We'll just take down a wee bit here. Now, why would you round the top of a stick? Well, a couple of reasons is if you're making your bow drill set and you need to round off the top for your spindle, or when you're making a tent peg, it stops the wood from splitting by beveling it and rounding it at the top. So just slowly, if you look at using your thumb against the spine of your knife, and you can slowly work your way around. You know, now for doing the tri-stick, it's really important to have a sharp knife, because the old saying is a sharp knife is much safer than a blunt knife. And the rationale behind that is if you have a really sharp knife, you can just work away nice and easy. Whereas if it's a blunt knife, you have to put much more effort into it, which that's when mistakes can happen and cuts happen. So there we go, just rounding off the top. Simple as that, right? So we've done our spike, our point, and we've rounded off. Another simple feature to do is, again, the practice is, of course, a notch, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to do a normal pot hanging notch. And to do that, what we're going to have to do is we have to do a line across the centre of it. And I'm going to do that now by batoning it on top of the block. So a simple way to get a notch in. So first of all, we'll put the timber down that we want the notch on. We'll put our knife onto the timber like so. So we put a little nick into the timber, straight line. And now what we're going to do is we're going to cut out the notch. To cut the notch, it's the similar grip to that we done for a round top. So we hold our knife, elbows on the knees, and we work up to the line. And slowly take out everything we need. So what we now have, well, we could call this a tent peg, rounded top, and we have the notch out and we have the spike, which would be a perfect tent peg. The last notch I'm going to show you now is, of course, the parrot beak notch, which would be used quite a lot when it comes to making pot hangers and danglers for pot hangers. And we're going to do that a similar way, but we have to use the baton again to do this. Again, we baton down the first one, part of an X, and we'll do it here, and we bang that. Knife back into the sheath again when we're moving. And now what we're going to have to do now is just take out the access material round the X. We do that again, elbows on your knees, work round below the X, and just keep working away. And for scouts, this is such a simple wee task to do, because it's all nice wee simple skills to just get their knife handling up to speed, which is so important. And we get it here. Some people do laugh at me because whenever I'm doing a bit of carving, I sometimes have the tongue out. But I don't know whether it makes me do it any better, but it does. So as you can see, this now is your parrot beak. And what that means is that can sit on a pot hanger, and it actually holds it. It's a much more secure one than this, which I would use mainly for, be it tent pegs or trigger traps, all that type of stuff, you know, where you're going to need that wee notch. Whereas this one, your parrot beak, is more handier for definitely for your pot hanger, which is very good. So that's your parrot beak notch. Two really good important notches to have, right? And our very last hold now, again, safety one, is that for doing your feather sticks. So feather sticks, that a lot of you are aware, is a really simple way of getting a fire going. Because when we're in the woods, especially in Ireland and especially in Fermanagh, what you'll find is everywhere is wet. Everywhere. Any twigs on the ground, all soaking wet. So the only way that we can actually get a fire going is to look for dead standing. And what dead standing is, it's branches that are still in the trees that haven't fallen on the ground, and the centre of the core is still dry. So it's really, really important that we can get those to get the fire going. So what I've done is, I'll just get them here now. Hold that there. Right. So piece of dry timber for this hold, right, is this one slightly different. What we're going to do is we're going to put the knife, and similar to that of your chest lever grip, but what we're going to do now is, it's in the chest lever grip position, we'll turn it round slightly at about 45 degrees. Place the knife firmly, your hand firmly against your knee. And what we're going to do now is we're going to pull the wood towards us. And what we're doing is we're taking wee fine slithers of wood. It's nearly like in school we would have used planes for bringing down the taking shavings off. Well, it's the exact same technique, just to get as many curls as we can right down, so the knife isn't moving. I'm just pulling away at the timber. Well, that's it, folks. I really hope that you enjoyed this section of the video that we're doing within the Northern Province. It's something that, like all skills and all scouting skills, you need to be practicing, and it's all about safety, safety, safety. I'm always going to be here. I'm always at the end of the phone for all our scouting family. If you need any advice or help, please, you know me by now. Within the province, I'm about a long time, and I'm always willing to help, give advice. You've seen the range of knives. They're on the market. Any advice you need on purchasing knives, anything like that, just give me a call. But hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope it'll get a lot of people back on their scouting journey, to get back into the outdoors after this mad time that we've had during COVID. It's really important now for your own health and your own mental health to get back out into the wilderness. And more than anything, folks, we need to keep scouting. Scouting is so important for the young people that's under our care. And as leaders, we have a duty to make sure that they are safe and we keep them safe. And we're going to do that by providing good support for their head. So get outside, get out into doing your bushcrafting backwoods, and more than anything, start enjoying life again, because we're nearly at the end of this COVID.